Hi. Hi, Simran. How are
Hi,
you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good too. So, everyone, welcome to season 2 of Coffee with KK. I have Simranjeet today with me from Womble Bond Dickinson. She's a trainee solicitor, and I'll leave it up to her to give the rest of her introduction.
Yeah, sure. Trainee solicitor at Womble Bond Dickinson. It's a UK top 20 firm. Currently my second seat. I was in the training contract process, for I think quite a few cycles. I graduated from the University of Bristol in 2018 with a law degree, and then from there did various internships and vacation schemes, which then allowed me to get my training contract offers. And I then did the LPC, and now I'm training.
Wow, that's great. I can completely relate with going through a lot of application cycles. I think I'm on my third one currently, and I have no sign of giving up still. So, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear.
Yeah, I think it's really important to see other people go through a lot of application cycles as well, because I think a lot of people romanticize about having to go through one application cycle and gaining a training contract, and I feel like that's very misleading to a lot of law students.
Mm. Yeah, I'd say so as well, because I mean, there are people who have done it, and that's absolutely fantastic. But of course, there are some people as well who don't. And I think it's also, the average age of a trainee is, I think, 27 or 28 years old. And the people that I work with as well, they did several other careers and then decided to be a trainee solicitor as well. So it's not so much as a set step by step of you do this and then you do this and you're going to get a training contract. So it's very much kind of ebbs and flows in terms of what you do and what you end up and when you get your training contract.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've seen so many people that I message on LinkedIn, like just cold messaging them, and they've just started their training contract and they have changed careers after years, like after 30 years of doing something else. And it's actually really inspiring to see how people do that and don't decide to do law until very late in their life.
Yeah.
So, anyways, moving into the more legal questions, application questions that everyone's here for. I have a very important question. The first one, just wanted to get it out of the way. My favorite question to ask my interviewees. What's your favorite coffee order? I know every lawyer and every law student has one.
I don't drink coffee. Well,
Wow.
yeah, I don't drink coffee. I used to, and I used to make my own kind of bootleg coffee, but it made my heart rate really fast, and it would make me feel almost quite paranoid and jittery and shaky. So
Oh,
I don't drink coffee at all. I don't drink tea either. Not gonna lie, I just drink water and natural vibes.
wow. That like I feel like that's my first time ever. Like in 1 year into law, I've started drinking coffee, and I don't think I'm ever gonna go back. So
Yeah.
how do you pull through like nights and like keep yourself going? Red Bull or
No, I mean honestly, I do tend to actually have quite a good sleep schedule. I usually sleep around 11 or midnight every night and then wake up. If I'm working from home, I'll wake up around 8. And if I'm working in the office, then I'll wake up around 6. But I still manage to get around 6 hours of sleep every night,
oh,
6 or
wow.
7. So I think that's maybe why. And I don't nap either. I don't like taking naps. So I think I just take the day, just work through the day, and then when it's done, then I just go to sleep. It's very boring, but yeah. When I was at uni, though, that's when I did drink coffee because I did need to do those all-nighters. I remember in first year, I did take a trip to co-op, I think, around 1 or 2 a.m. just to get Red Bull. I remember that. That was, oh God, bad memories. But yeah, I think it was a couple of nights before the exam. Needs to put in a couple of all-nighters. So that's when I've done it at uni. But after
Yeah.
that, I just thought, well, there's not really any need for me to just do this kind of lifestyle. So
That's a good thing to hear, though, that you don't have a lot of sleepless nights as a trainee solicitor, because
oh
as a
yeah.
law student, obviously there are so many. Like I've had so many Red Bulls and so many coffees, I can't even count them. Anyway, moving into the application questions, really this time, I have been binge watching your YouTube channel
Thank you.
this whole application season, and I absolutely love your YouTube channel with your research, how to research your law firm. So I'm not going to be asking any questions on how to research your law firm because I feel like that video has done justice, and I
Oh,
think
thank you.
anyone who needs to learn how to research your law firm should just refer to that video. Um, I did notice that you applied to a lot of law firms in one of your videos, that you had made a whole list and you applied to over 20 law firms, I think, if I'm not mistaken. How
Yeah.
did you manage doing this? Because I'm applying to like 10 and I feel like it's impossible.
Yeah, I think firstly, the more I did applications, the faster I became at completing them. But I just like to kind of say as a bit of a disclaimer is throughout that time, I understood that I was applying to quite a few law firms. I think part of that was because I was really triggered from my vacation scheme at PwC because I put all my eggs in one basket for that vacation scheme. I didn't apply elsewhere because I was so certain I'd get that training contract offer, but then I didn't. So then in the next cycle, I told myself I'm not going to put all my hedge all my bets on one firm.
Yeah.
So then I got a bit crazy and ended up applying for loads. But I made sure though that the quality of my applications didn't decline to the point where I was stressed out thinking, oh God, I need to apply to 3 firms by the end of this week. Let me just quickly rush these out. I think it involved a lot of time management beforehand. So I remember before the application cycles opened in September, when they usually open for vacation schemes, I spent the August just researching when applications open for certain firms and when they close. And then I made a list and then prioritized which ones I should do first based on when the deadlines were and which ones had the nearest deadlines, which meant that for some of the vacation schemes where the deadline was 31st of January, I was applying in, say, maybe October, September, October. It meant that for the direct training contract applications that were in July, I was applying sometime in February. So I was applying really early. So I'd made loads of applications throughout the year, but it was very much like, okay, I'll finish this firm first, make sure it's completely, I'm 100% happy with it. Then I'll move on to the next application. And I think it was organization that allowed me to apply to all the firms that I wanted to within the deadline as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. But how were you able to manage this with a university work? I know a lot of students struggle with university deadlines and application deadlines.
Yeah. I mean, at the time, in all honesty, that cycle that I did, the final cycle was actually when I was paralegaling. The application cycle when I was at uni itself, I didn't quite manage that well because I only think I made around 3 or 4 applications during my third year of university. And yeah, I was more focused on trying to push my grades up, if I'm honest with you, at university, rather than trying to focus on getting a vacation scheme or a training contract. But then I did get my vacation scheme at PwC, so I thought I'd be one of those individuals who would get a training contract after, but that didn't work out. So then I was back at square one and I started the cycle again. So of course, at that time, I was balancing a 9 to 5 job. Sometimes, obviously later in the legal field, sometimes you are working a bit later than 5. And I was balancing that alongside doing training contract applications as well, which meant inevitably I'd be working evenings and weekends. It did mean that sometimes I had to sacrifice social plans. It meant that in the summer, in the summer where vacation schemes are usually happening, it meant that I had to sacrifice and not make any plans in the summer in case I got vacation schemes. So I'm really glad that I did that though, because it meant, I did end up getting vacation schemes and I was able to do them because I didn't make any other plans elsewhere. So for the sake of that year, I pretty much prioritized my career, which to some may seem quite like, I don't know, a bit obsessive or toxic in terms of you just put all your effort into that one thing. But for me personally, I gave myself that year to try and sort out my career. Otherwise, I was going to go and pay for my LPC myself, which I really didn't want to do. So having that year to just say, right, Sim, this is your time to just focus on your career. I don't think there's any harm or toxicity in me saying that, because sometimes obviously you have to work hard in order to get what you want. So I dedicated my whole year to just training contract applications and vaccine applications, in all honesty.
That's actually sounds great, because I agree. I've also been in the same boat as you. It's trying to do applications during my university, and I'm really struggling with it. I've made a list of 10, but I'm only able to do 4, like you said. I am also planning to pay for the LPC after this if I don't get a vacation scheme, which is also very disheartening, like you said. And I don't think it is very toxic to give a year to yourself. And because a very famous thing I go by is like, if you work hard, you can party harder. And I'm sure that 1 year that you worked hard has paid off now as your trainee solicitor.
Oh yeah, I've been partying hard ever since.
That's great. That's great to hear. I had another question linked to the amount of firms that you've applied to. I've heard that it's you can't send your best applications unless you want to really work at a firm. I know it's a very buzzword kind of a thing in the legal industry, like, oh, you have to only apply to five that you really really want to work at. You need to like the culture of the firm and everything. So do you think it was a very big disadvantage applying to a lot of different firms at the same time? Were you able to tailor your applications as much?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, for all the applications that I did, it didn't necessarily mean that I was accepted or went through to the next stage for every single one, because they may have probably seen through to the fact that this applicant is strong in this area, but in this area, perhaps in terms of her passion for actually wanting to work at this firm, that didn't shine through. One thing that I did realize, though, is the firms where I actually genuinely wanted to work and I saw myself working were the firms that I got through to the next stage for as well. And I think that's something that subconsciously in your mind is just kind of thinking, because when you are applying to a firm, the reason why people say that you can apply to a firm where you genuinely see yourself working is your writing style changes. You don't just focus on the facts of what the firm is about, you start relating it back to yourself, and you start aligning the qualities of the firm and the values and everything that they stand for. And you really want to try and persuade the firm that you were actually made to work at that firm. So I think your writing style automatically and subconsciously changes when you are applying to a firm that you really want to work for.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, applying to loads of firms, I wouldn't say it put me at a disadvantage. If I went back to the cycle again, I think I'll do the same approach. It's the exact same approach that I did before. But again, just saying that just because it worked for me doesn't mean it will necessarily work for everyone. Some people prefer doing fewer applications, but then doing fewer applications but making them more tailored, whereas for me it was very much a methodical approach. Okay, I applied to this firm, let me move on to the next one and the next one and the next one. So there's different ways of going about it, but this was a method for me that really worked out.
Yeah, everyone has your own way of working things out. Definitely, that makes sense. A lot of our viewers had this concern though, that with a lot of with less time, with spending a lot of time on your applications and your university work, a lot of less time goes into actually getting experience, work experience, while your university or having any like working anywhere, even at a Tesco or like any legal experience. What would you do in such a scenario? How would you? I know like a lot of law firms want experience, so what advice would you give to students who don't have any experience or have less experience?
Yeah. Cool. I guess in terms of that question, I'll talk first about how to organize the different, like how I organize all the different things to make sure that you can try and tackle experience and uni work and applications all in one. And then I'll talk about how I recommend like getting experience and stuff. But in terms of managing your time, there's loads of, I guess, productivity methods out there to help you find what method of balancing your time works well for you. For me, one thing that's helped is time blocking. So this is where you can get Google Calendar up and say, okay, 9 to 10, I'm going to do this. 10 to 11, I'm going to do this. 11 to 12, I'm going to have a break. 12 to 1, blah, blah, blah. And you basically fit everything into little chunks and you've got it down in front of you. And you then realize how much time you're going to spend to each thing. And if you are someone who can sit in one spot and wants to focus on one thing for a long space of time, then you can say 9 to 12, I'm going to do my university work. But if you're someone who likes to do loads of different things after short intervals, you can say 9 to 10 uni work, 10 to 11 applications, 11 to 12 finding work experience, for example. And that way you're able to then break up your day into manageable chunks for you to then balance all the different things. Because one thing I realize is I need to have things written down. And I've heard James Clear in Atomic Habits, he states that when you write something down, you tell yourself on paper you're going to do something, you're more likely to do it, kind of like a to-do list. Whereas if it's mentally in your head or sometimes even on your phone, you're less likely to do it, because also your phone's a distraction in some way. You go on your phone to check your to-do list and then you suddenly find yourself on TikTok or Instagram because you're like, oh, let me check these other apps as well while I'm at it. So writing it down, maybe using Google Calendar on your laptop, for example, maybe something that could help you out, just to maybe time block your time. And so you're able to organize what you want to do at every single hour of the day. But obviously within that, you want to incorporate your break times as well. So you're not just, working 9 to 9 flat out, because you don't want to do that either. In terms of how to gain work experience, so advice for those who have little/no experience, I'll talk specifically about legal work experience because I think that's what people struggle with the most. And I understand the whole trouble that there is in any kind of professional sector, really, in terms of to get experience, you need to get experience or have experience. It's just a never-ending vicious cycle of experience that you just need. And at the end of the day, what you need is just one foot in the door for you to then get that role. And for paralegal roles, unfortunately, sometimes some of the requirements mean that you have to have completed the LPC, or you have to have 3 to 4 years experience, which personally I don't agree with because it is an entry-level position. I was very fortunate to gain my first paralegal role without doing the LPC and without having a previous paralegal experience. And that was through a legal assistant program with a regional firm. And there are different kind of programs maybe out there that may be available, and that's something that you could definitely kind of go down in terms of a route. Another thing is keeping close contact with any legal recruiters, so then they can do the job searching for you because they've got the connections in the legal sphere as well. So some recruiters that I recommend, like the Stephen James Partnership or Flex Legal, are a really good agency as well that offer short-term paralegal placements. Those are definitely good ones to sign up for. But I think increasingly, to get work experience in the legal sphere, it has involved a lot of initiative taking, which means sometimes messaging on LinkedIn. I know a few people that I know recently have gotten roles on LinkedIn because they've messaged someone on LinkedIn, built a bit of a relationship and connection with this person, found common ground, and then put out the question, are you hiring at the moment, or is there a role available for someone like me of my experience? So that's one way that people have found experiences. Another thing that's been happening now that COVID has opened back up a bit is networking events. So I attended 2 networking events recently with the London Young Professionals Network. So there's the London Young Lawyers Network and the London Young Professionals Network. So recently at the one of the events that they were holding, I think last week or so, I spoke to someone who actually works for a particular consultancy, and I then reached out to that individual on LinkedIn the day after, and tomorrow we're having a phone call. And it's not even about a job role or anything, it's honestly just to have a chat. And I think sometimes you have to go into gaining experience, but not trying to seek experience, just trying to seek connections, because then those connections can then lead to something. So that's one way in which I'd go about it, is really about putting yourself out there, and trying to go to every opportunity that you can find, because you never know how that can convert. Sorry, my my voice is going. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry.
You're fine.
Ooh, I've been so ill, so like my throat is just going. But yeah, I think that's how you gain experience.
Just
Okay, I'm good.
I think everyone's having like the flu right now. I had it like for a week. It was just so bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going through that right now.
Just adding on to Simran's on how to gain experience, I recently gained a part-time role as well by just cold emailing firms. I live in Canterbury. I study at the University of Kent, and I just cold emailed all the firms in Canterbury and sent them my CV and asked them if they had any paid roles, unpaid roles, any legal assistant roles, and they approached me for a job after that. And I think that also really helps, because even if they don't have anything right now, they always have your CV. You can build a rapport with them. Like you said, you can even also message someone on LinkedIn. I've done that so many times, and I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of, because I feel like people actually enjoy when you reach out to them. They actually appreciate it, and they enjoy. Other people also like making connections. So I really do think it's a good opportunity to do that.
Sorry, yeah, definitely. I was on mute there.
It's okay. One of our viewers has asked, I think you mentioned that you were working as a paralegal during your LPC. Her question is if you were working during your LLB, but she wanted to also know how you were able to manage this along studying as well.
Did you mean balancing experience with working, studying?
Balancing your LPC with your paralegal role.
Oh yeah, so I mean, that was quite easy to balance, I think, because I was working at that firm for 1 day a week, where I was doing the LPC for kind of 2 days a week. So my paralegal work, it was very much when I went into the office, I would do that work, and then at the end at 5 p.m. I would log off, and that was my day done. So I kind of molded everything else around that. So I used the time blocking thing that I mentioned earlier.
Mm.
just to make sure I was able to, like, sorry if my voice sounds weird, my voice is actually going, but so yeah, I used the time blocking thing earlier, and yeah, that's the main thing, like how I managed to kind of balance my time during the week, and made sure that obviously I had my job on Monday, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday was all my study days. So that was, I was quite flexible with my time then. So yeah.
That's great. Another question that a lot of our viewers are also asking about. I know a lot of, along with the applications and how to write the application, and apart from researching, it also depends on a lot of writing of your answers. I know a lot of
Yeah.
firms are moving away from the traditional long essay questions and just moving to tests. But a lot of firms do still have a lot of application questions. And there are a lot of companies that provide application databases right now. And I was just wondering if that's something you recommend or something that you used, or I don't know, like what is your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that application databases can be quite useful if you need to have a look at how people have structured answers, if you have no idea kind of where to start, or if you really want to critique why an answer was good or bad. I think that's really a great way to do it. But if you're going to use application databases to copy and paste, or literally just try and emulate how that person has done an application, that won't work out. So I think application databases, they're great in terms of providing information and context, but it's more so about how you use that information. I think that's the most important thing for that.
Yeah, that's definitely true on how you use it. In that way, how would you recommend using your application to stand out to the firm? And how do you think yours you how do you sorry how did you use your sorry, I can't speak English. How did you use your application to stand out to the firm?
Yeah, so I think the one thing that allowed me to really make my application stand out was understanding what made me a good candidate and what my strengths were, and then linking that to what the firm themselves were really proud of, because I was then able to lend into that. So I kind of had a basic structure in my head of, when I was writing applications, I would write a statement. So, why am I interested in this firm? I'd provide that reason, that one reason. And then after that, I would talk about why I was interested in that with proof and evidence, and how I can show the firm how I can show the firm I was interested in that element with evidence as well. So is the why and how. So that's, I think, how I really made my application stand out.
That's actually great. That's great advice. But what's the next stage then? So you've made your application, you research the firm, you get into the vacation scheme, and I think the next stage that people struggle with is what to ask at the events. I know I personally have struggled with this, what to ask at law firm events, like at inside days, open days, at vacation schemes, because I feel like most of the things that I want to know is obviously on their website or online, and other things like, oh, what's the culture of the firm? It's kind of obvious what they're going to say. So what would you actually ask at the firm to stand out?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think it depends on what the person has said. It depends on the situation and the context. But to help you think of questions to ask at these events, I think firstly, it's really important to do your research beforehand. There's no point asking the question at an event, how many offices do you have? You can research that, you can find that out on the firm's website very, very easily. So when you are doing your research of the firm, there may be questions that crop up from then. You can make a note of those and then ask those at those events to lawyers of those firms. Another thing is, in the event itself, say if you don't have any questions prepared beforehand, really think about the who, what, when, where, why, how. So when someone says something like, I don't know, I'm really busy as a trainee, I don't really get much time for myself. I don't know, imagine if a trainee says that. You can ask, okay, why do you not get much time for yourself? Why are you so busy? What's your day in the life like? How do you manage your time? How do you make sure you don't get burnt out? So there's loads of different who, what, when, where, why, how questions that can come out from someone saying a certain statement. So that's how I went about it at events. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's actually yeah, that's really helpful to pick on small things that they say at the event. But
Yeah.
my next question is, what was your biggest challenge in the whole process with your application or your interviews or the tests or the events itself? What was your biggest challenge?
I think it's the uncertainty of it all. So just going through the process and being like, I'm working so hard. I'm in this final interview, for example, and they could easily say, no, I'm back at square one. So it was honestly just the uncertainty of it all, and just kind of thinking you kind of had to keep faith throughout the whole process. Sometimes you'd get those thoughts of, oh God, am I ever going to get a training contract offer? And you've kind of got to push through that. So sometimes it's an internal battle. I think that internal battle that you have with your own mind is the biggest challenge that I had personally when I was in the process.
Yeah, definitely. The uncertainty of it, waiting, the anticipation of waiting for application, the rejection. That I feel like that's a whole different side of the application process that nobody really talks about a lot. Speaking of challenges, there's obviously a lot more that has come with COVID-19 now, and I feel like not only lawyers but also firms have been impacted so much with COVID-19. How do you think Womble Bond Dickinson or any law firm in general has been impacted because of COVID-19? And how do you think us as future lawyers have been impacted?
Yeah, I mean, when the crisis first hit, I think the massive thing with law firms was, oh God, how are we going to do our work? Because, working from home wasn't a thing. But I think working from home now has become very much part of the norm, and firms are being they're doing hybrid working and stuff. So I think the challenge isn't working from home now at the moment. I think it's more so actually retaining the lawyers that you have in your firm, because I think one thing that the pandemic has really taught people is the life that they had before the pandemic, where they were working flat out, maybe wasn't the best lifestyle for them. So I think generally law firms have been seeing a lot of people leaving the firms, going to other firms, or leaving the career altogether. And that's not only a legal problem. My friends have witnessed the same thing in professional accounting firms as well. So I think a big challenge law firms are having at the moment is trying to retain their own lawyers at the moment. I think another challenge that lawyers are having is, in particular practice areas, things are about to kick off. So for insolvency, for example, all those schemes that were in place by Rishi Sunak, I think they're going to, I'm not sure whether they have already or they're going to, but those schemes aren't going to be in place anymore. Loads of companies are going to become insolvent. That team is going to be absolutely busy with work. So trying to maybe put in safeguards to ensure that they're ready for that hit when it happens is really important. Of course, there are going to be effects of COVID-19 that will probably be felt for years to come. Lawyers still say that we've not recovered from the credit crash back in the day either. So I think it's going to have a lot of long-lasting effects on law firms. And I think it's about trying to ride the wave, essentially. Obviously, they've been through the worst of it, hopefully, now already. There's been quite a few changes. And hopefully law firms can take their lessons from it and understand that they need to keep it moving. So for example, one thing is smaller firms have realized during COVID-19 that they can't just rely on their single business being safe. In events like this, when you have mergers with other firms, it's an additional safety net. So a lot of smaller firms now are going for more mergers, which is another big thing that's happening during this time now because of COVID. So we'll probably see more activity with that as well soon.
Well, yeah, that's actually a lot of information to process right now. I did read about the thing where firms are trying to retain their current employees already. I know like a lot of big four companies are giving a lot of incentives for people to come into the company, come into their office right now, because a lot of people are adjusting with working from home, and a lot of companies are actually allowing. I think I've read this in the U.S. that a lot of companies are allowing you to work from home all the time now, and you can just work from anywhere in the world essentially, and people are just moving to low tax countries, easier places to live in. And yeah, I do think it's a very big challenge now, because a lot of companies have realized that they don't need their staff to come in to for them to work essentially. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is a big challenge for a lot of companies to get people to come back. One of our viewers, Angeline, has asked, another challenge that students do face is not realizing their impact of their grades early on. And do law firms usually look at A-level grades or like your first year grades at university?
It depends on the firm. There are firms out there that will place emphasis on that, and they make that clear in the application process that they're looking for people with this many grades and higher. And that's unfortunate, and it's inevitable that there will be some firms out there that do have that element. For them, it's kind of like a process of trying to filter out the number of candidates that they have. applying to their firms, but there are also out there really, really good firms that don't have A-level requirements or have scrapped them or have low A-level requirements as well. So I wouldn't feel disheartened by that. I'm someone, if just relating from my personal experience, my A levels were good. So I had 3 A's at A level, but during my first year and second year of uni, I had 2 2s. So when I was applying to certain firms, of course, I'd have to disclose the fact that I didn't have the highest grades in my first year and second year of university. In my final year, I did manage to pick my grades up to get a 2-1 overall, but it wasn't a very high one. So again, that was something that I had to disclose. And a bit of a fun fact, I applied to a firm where on the website they said you need a high 2-1, and I didn't have a high 2-1, but I still got through to the training contract process and got an offer from them at the end. So sometimes, if it's a firm that you really do like, try not to get put off by certain things that are on their website. When it comes to A-level requirements, sometimes they do really prioritize that. So the trick that I played was quite risky and may not work in every situation, but I really wanted to work at that firm, really wanted to apply to that firm. So that's why I applied. I try not to let the grade thing put me off. But the same might happen, or they may reject because of grades, which is sad. But yeah, sometimes it's just about playing that risk off.
Yeah, that's actually really inspirational, because I can't believe going from a 2-2 to a 2-1. That's actually so hard. I'm currently trying to I'm in my third year, and I'm also really trying to manage my grades, hold them high. I know a lot of firms hold prestige with accepting first. Obviously, coming from a non-Russell Group university, also I feel like I'm at a disadvantage with not getting a first from a non-Russell Group university. So I feel like there's a lot of pressure on students with grades, and I feel like a lot of firms hold that stigma with A-level grades and first-year grades. So yeah, it's great to hear that a lot of firms don't look into that, especially. Moving on to your training contract, and a lot of our viewers today have a lot of questions with your training contract. How has your experience been? I know that you started your training contract virtually and haven't been going into the office that much, obviously because of COVID. So how are you finding the support that you're getting? Do you think it would be as much as you would be like other than COVID?
Yeah, I think working from home was a lot more difficult than I expected, because I thought it would just be, Teams meetings and it'll be fine. But sometimes you overthink things that you wouldn't be overthinking if you were in the office. So one of them is, do I call this person? Do I IM them, or do I email them to get contact with them? Or do I call them? I don't know whether I mentioned that, but yeah. So you always trying to think, how do I get a hold of this person? Whereas in the office, you just walk to their door and just ask them. So I work in the office a lot more now, which is good because our firm does hybrid working. But in my first seat, it was completely virtual pretty much. So yeah, it was very much, sometimes you felt like it was just you and your room, which was a lot more difficult. And really, when I started my second seat, that's when I actually really started feeling like I was part of the firm. Because that's when the social started and the CSR, and I feel like I've got a lot more extra responsibility now. And I think a big part of a trainee is exposure, and not only doing the work and doing it well, but really forming relationships and connections while you're in the firm itself. So working from home really kind of took away that element, because you wouldn't even know where to start. If I wanted to talk to someone in a particular team, who do I even contact? Because I have no clue. Whereas in the office, you get an idea of who's working where in different teams, etc. So yeah, you get a bit more of an insight into the different teams that there are. So then you get an insight into who those people are, and then you can speak to those people. So it makes it a lot easier from that respect as well.
Yuval, I think you mentioned you're in your second seat right now. I also read this on your blog, actually, with your every week blog of your training contract. It's actually quite interesting. If anyone wants to know her journey of her training contract, it's quite interesting to read. It feels like I'm on the journey with you. How are you finding your seats? Which one do you like better so far?
Oh, I like them in different ways, if that makes sense. So, sorry, my throat is so, oh God. Anyway, so the first seat is construction disputes, and that was more of a litigation type seat. So the reason why I liked that was because in terms of like my writing style and stuff, it really helped me to improve that, because sometimes you're writing letters to people and you have to be quite assertive or quite litigious, whereas there are other letters where it was a lot calmer in tone. So that really helped with that aspect. And also you get to know a lot more about the dispute resolution process. But real estate's really different. I think real estate's a lot more fast paced. You get a lot more responsibility in real estate because in a litigation seat, everything you do gets reviewed. Every email, every letter, everything gets reviewed by someone senior because it could come back to you in court. Whereas in real estate, it's very much kind of, you've got a lot of responsibility, and the fee earners sometimes don't have time to check everything, every single thing that you do. So if they want you to email the client, you can email the client and, and just email them without it getting reviewed. And I think that was a massive shocker to me at first, but I quite like that because it then forces you to not rely on other fee earners to just, they're just going to check it anyway, so it's fine. So yeah, I think that was a really important part of like my seat. So I like them in different ways. I'm sure I'll come to a decision about which one I prefer later on, but construction disputes was a great first seat because it taught me a lot of skills, transferable skills that are required for all these other seats as well. So that's great.
That's great. It's great to hear that the firm is also giving trainees like a lot of responsibility early on. It
Yeah.
helps you boost your confidence, I guess, at the start. Have you ever worked on? I don't know if you're allowed to talk about it, but have you ever? Do you think you've ever? What was your best case that you ever worked on? The most interesting case that you worked on so far?
Oh, my most interesting one so far is I can't really give that much detail about it, but it was a mediation that I attended in my first seat. And I think the reason for why it was so interesting was because it was attending a mediation. And the two parties were on completely different ends on how to settle the figure. They just could not find a figure to settle on. So after the mediation, it didn't work because the parties didn't settle. But it was so interesting to see the negotiation process. It was so interesting to see the partners, the strategic tactics that they used in mediations. It was so much strategy and tactics involved. A lot of gameplay, which was really, really insightful to see. And I think that's why I found it so interesting.
Yeah, wow, that's actually great to hear. Yeah, mediation is always amazing to hear, especially when you're in one mediation. I know, like, have you ever participated in a mediation when you were in law school or a negotiation?
I've done a negotiation in my final year because I was doing a module called Corporate Law Simulation at Bristol. So within that, I think one of the workshops was we would be negotiating on I think the terms of a contract. So that was my only negotiation experience, really.
Oh, okay, wow. Another question we have from one of our viewers is related to cases that you worked on. Have you ever worked on any pro bono cases?
I haven't worked on pro bono yet because because of COVID, really. But I have been doing quite a lot of CSR. I was responsible for doing a lot of fundraising activities. Our first fundraising activity in September for my firm, and I'm also the lead person who talks to this charity that we're partnered with. So I'm the person who's responsible for maintaining that contact, organizing meetings, responding to any emails that they have, organizing events with that charity. So it's a lot of responsibility, but it's really great that I've gotten that responsibility straight away. I think pro bono will definitely get started soon. I think with COVID, there was quite a lot of like stops and a lot of things, but now we're kind of slowly finding our feet again as a firm. We're happy to, I guess, take on like pro bono as well. So hopefully that gets kickstarted soon.
Well, yeah, I think I saw a post just today about the legal walk also that Womble
Yeah.
Bond attended. That was great to see. I really wanted to attend as well. So a lot of people come. It was a great initiative. Um, One of our other viewers, Nikita, has asked, what is the trainee environment like between everyone? Is it more competitive or collaborative?
Oh, I love the trainees I work with. They're honestly some of my they're really, really good friends to have. I wouldn't say it's competitive at all because I think if they were competitive individuals, I don't think they would have gotten hired by the firm because it's not really aligning to the culture of what we're like at Wombles. I think the kind of culture that we have at Wombles is to just help people out and to kind of be very approachable, welcoming, friendly, genuine, and down to earth. So the firm definitely hires people who are like that. There are obviously, as a trainee, sometimes you do have to kind of put your own priority first. So when it comes to seat options, for example, that was very much a decision that we all made individually. It wasn't something that we discussed as much because it was quite a personal decision. But, again, at the end of the day, that's something that's very natural. But other than that, I wouldn't really say there's any element of competition between us. If I'm ever stuck on anything, I can ask them or they can ask me. And yeah, it's,
Wow,
it's
okay,
really
that's great
nice.
to hear. Speaking about the culture of the firm and how what Wombles is like, what is like the diversity is like? What is the diversity like at the firm? A lot of our viewers today are Indian, and I think they're asking about, uh, does the company have a lot of Indians or people from India, like not like international law students essentially?
I'm not sure about international because I don't go around asking like, oh, where are you originally from? I think that would be quite problematic in a law firm sometimes. So yeah, I think there is definitely a lot of diverse people, whether it be Indian or any other background in the firm. Definitely from my personal perspective, I've worked at quite a few firms, and I think in this firm in particular, there's been quite a lot more than what I've seen generally. So that's great to see, in my opinion. But I think what's really makes this firm stand out is not only the fact that there's a lot of diverse people, but it's actually more so that everyone makes you feel inclusive. Because you can be in a firm full of Indian people, for example, but they might not make you feel included.
Yeah,
um, so I think what's more important than there being loads of people of a certain background in a firm is for everyone to be inclusive,
yeah,
regardless of your background. And when you are an inclusive firm, then you automatically, in my opinion, attract diverse talent. So of course, it's really important to look at, the partnership. Who's from what background at partnership level, at an associate level, at a junior level, at a trainee level. Completely get that that's important. And it gives you a good hint as to how the firm approaches diversity and diversity in the firm. But I wouldn't say, just because you're going to a firm where there's all Indian people, it's necessarily going to be inclusive. It might be completely the other way.
so how do you go about researching about the inclusivity of a firm? Like what reports would you see, or how would you just talk to trainees, or how would you find this out?
Inclusivity you can find out, for example, from, I mean, it's something that I think you have to actually find out from interacting with the firm itself. I think it's something that you can find out from certain awards that they've maybe received. It might be something that you can try and figure out from retention rates, but trainees leave firms for all types of reasons as well. So maybe inclusivity is one of those elements. You can read up on articles on Roll on Friday. Sometimes I know that's such a gossipy kind of news article website, but sometimes there are situations there where they talk on Roll on Friday about times where firms and their colleagues were not inclusive. So that's definitely something to bear in mind as well. But I think inclusivity is something that you really try and figure out actually when you are interacting with a firm on a vacation scheme, on an open day, at a networking event. You can find out whether a firm's inclusive, for example, even during the application process, through the questions that they ask at an interview. I've heard of some nightmare questions where interviewers have asked, the most horrible questions because they think, they see that you're not white, for example, and ask you some crazy question about, your culture. So that's a big hint in terms of how inclusive a firm is as well. So really looking at the representatives of the firm when you're speaking to them at events is a great way to try and get a hint of how they view diversity and inclusion in the firm itself.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It good places to look at the firm and stuff. Yeah, I completely agree. Understanding what the person's attitude is like towards you and stuff. I think the last topic on my list today is commercial awareness. It's the biggest buzzword in the legal industry, I feel like, and I know that every lawyer has, or every trainee has very little time on their plate, and it's very important to keep up with being commercially aware. So what is your secret way of staying up to date with the current news and whilst being busy?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that trainees are busy and everyone's busy. I guess the one thing that I do with my commercial awareness is I make it come to me rather than me going out to find it. So I sign up to email subscriptions, like legit. In my trainee inbox right now, I've signed up to Practical Law and Lexis. They give you current awareness updates every week. I've got it on a week. You can set it on a daily kind of target or a weekly or a monthly. They can send you emails however often you want. I get mine weekly on a Monday, which is current awareness about my practice area that I'm in, so real estate, but also about current awareness generally about what's happening in the world. So I just get email subscriptions sent into my inbox, which then I can read in my own time. One thing that I did also when I was in the process was on LinkedIn, I turned on my notifications for the daily rundowns. So they're notifications that you get every day in the morning. Usually, I get mine around kind of 9 a.m. in the morning, which is a good time. And you get notifications sent to you about what's happening in the day, what's in the day's top news. So that's one way in which I did my commercial awareness as well. I just made it very kind of easy for me to find. And I think one thing that you can do, which I didn't do in the process because it wasn't very much a thing, but you can follow commercial awareness based Instagram pages. So even when you're scrolling on your timeline, you find these posts and you read them. You can keep it in
Yeah.
the back of your mind, then go back, keep on scrolling as well. So that's another thing that you can do too.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. I have like I think I follow Watson's Daily, CNN, BBC, and even though like one post comes up on your feed, it's something added to your brain. It's just like the smallest things that help.
Yeah,
One of our
definitely.
viewers, Ananya, has asked, "How would you demonstrate the commercial awareness in an application?"
In an application, sometimes it depends on the question that's being asked. Um, so they can ask you a question of tell us about a recent news story. So that's one way in which you're being asked about your commercial awareness. Another way you can talk about your commercial awareness in an application is when you're showing your interest in something. So if you're interested, why are you interested in a particular firm, or why have you chosen commercial law? You can talk about, current awareness or something that's happening in the world from a legal perspective that's really pushed you towards a certain firm or a certain reason for why you wanted to choose this career. So it is something that, sometimes you don't have to wait for the question to be asked in order for you to talk about commercial awareness. If it's a topic that really interests you, and you feel like it relates to the question and what's being asked, you can definitely talk about it then as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I feel like I've even in the start when I was doing my applications, I would try to like to do put in a commercial awareness somewhere. You would just put it in anywhere, like, oh, why this firm, and then you would just put some news story. I feel like yeah, it's very hard to understand where to put in news stories and where not to put in news stories. I think it's very important to understand where that goes. But I think we've had a really good conversation today, Simran. Thank you so much for this. I just have one final question. What advice would you give yourself if you were in uni and you knew everything you knew today?
Mm. Oh, what do I say? That was a good question. Um, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is don't give up. That's so corny, so I'm not going to say that. I am going to say connections are important. I've only really realized how important connections are in the last year or two. Before then, it wasn't really something that I put much effort in. But when and by forming connections, putting yourself out there is one way in which connections come to you. So for me, through my YouTube channel, through Instagram, through being active on LinkedIn, it's opened up opportunities for me that I would have never fathomed before. So I think if I was to go back in time, I think that's one thing that I would do is put myself out there more, go to more networking events, open days, try and really interact with people in the profession and outside of the profession a lot more, because then that can open up opportunities that you wouldn't have realized before either. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much. Thank you for all your time today. I'm sure our viewers today enjoyed everything you said. Thank you so much for sharing your insight.
No, thank you so much. I'm sorry I had a bit of a coughing fit throughout, but yeah, it's my
No,
throat's
no
been
worries.
so
It's
weird.
okay. Hope
Yeah.
you're okay.
Yeah, no, it's really weird. I think at night it just goes weird. But anyway, thank you anyway. And I've had so much fun. So yeah, and these were great questions too. And thanks for everyone else for, getting involved and asking questions as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.